issued a very strong statement in support of the UK, and the Prime Minister and President Macron have spoken about this. They issued a joint statement yesterday condemning the attack on UK soil, and the PM is speaking to President Macron again today. And
so what's this about fantasy politics?
Well, I think we've had a very, very strong statement of support, not just from France, but from across the spectrum of our friends and allies around the world. And I think many people would have been very impressed by the language that was used in spite of all the suggestions we've heard to the contrary from the Trump White House, from Nikki Haley last night in the UN, the US ambassador to the UN specifically pointing the finger at Russia and echoing UK language. And, you know, this is of something that, of course, countries around the world will react to in different ways. But I must say I've been very struck by the levels of outrage and the levels of support for the UK.
Sure, but the point the French are making, President Macron's making, is that he wants evidence before he'll support any action against Russia. And there isn't hard evidence, is there? That's the difficulty for Mrs May, isn't it?
I think really you have to look at what has happened, and I think it was actually Ken Clarke who really summed it up best yesterday in the House of Commons. This is a Russian nerve agent created in Russia,
in the Soviet Union. It was a long time ago
in the Soviet Union, and by the way, it's obvious that they have hung on to those stocks illegally, used against a Russian defector, a guy who was expressly the target for Russian revenge and retaliation, at a time when Vladimir Putin has only recently been on public television in Russia, calling for such people to be assassinated, and indeed using poison as the instrument of assassination.
But what we don't know is
I also very struck, if I may say, by the kind of smug sarcasm with which the Russians are denying it, because they want effectively to have it both ways. They want to say not us, but they also want the world and the people of Russia to know that it is them. There's a reason for that, which is that at a time when Russia is going so much in the wrong direction, when Vladimir Putin's regime is becoming more autocratic, when freedoms are being eroded, of course there are going to be people who think, well, do I want to put up with this? People in the Russian system who may want to defect to the UK, who may want to work for a country with a different value
whatever
system.
Their motives
and
may
so,
be.
And so now is the moment for Putin to jam the lid down.
Right.
To send a signal to those people and say, you do that, you're going to die.
All right. That's the message. So therefore, what we should have done in this particular case, surely, was we should have sent the stuff off to the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, as we're required to do under these circumstances. Then Russia could have got involved in it as well, and we would have been absolutely fireproof. We'd have been able to say, here we have the very clear evidence. And the problem for the French, and for some others, including the opposition in this country, some of the opposition anyway, is that we didn't do that. Why didn't we do that?
What we did was we've been entirely in conformity with OPCW procedures. On the 8th of March, we notified the OPCW Technical Secretariat.
We haven't sent off a sample of this nerve.
When I summoned the Russian ambassador to the Foreign Office on the 12th and sought an explanation from his government, as we are entitled to do under Article 9 of the Convention on the Prevention of Chemical Weapons. We received absolutely no response from the Russians, and it is they who are failing to comply.
All right,
it is they. I must get this point over. It is they who are failing to comply with that treaty. And you ask about the sample. We are sending a sample.
When?
I can't give you the.
But I mean very soon, because after all, we've condemned them before we've sent the sample. That's my point.
A sample to the Director General of the OPCW, to whom I've already spoken, and we are liaising with them, and of course it will be up to them to examine the Novichok and to determine exactly what they make of it.
And what the French are saying, which is quite an important point, isn't it? What the French are saying is, do that sort of thing first, and then, having provided the evidence, and there can be no question about it whatsoever, then we find them guilty and we declare whatever the sentence ought to be. That should have been the way it was done.
No, no. I think it is overwhelmingly obvious to most sensible people.
Not to the French.
And different French spokespeople have said different things at different times.
Well, President Macron has
issued a very strong statement of condemnation.
That's different. That's different from
all right. So I think you heard what people have said in the UN last night. You've heard what NATO has said.
Sure.
We've had denunciations from around the world.
All right. Well, let's try and move it on.
So, frankly, I'm struck by that.
Let's just move it on a little bit.